Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 4 of math. This is task 2, weekly math instructional video. Our standard for this week is for NBT.1.3, which is use place value understanding to round multi-digit whole numbers to any place. This is the same standard that we worked on last week. We're just going to keep working on that. So you should have already watched the weekly overview video. Now you are watching the instructional video, which is task 2. So when you're finished, you're going to do task 3, which is the weekly assignment on Savas, which is on Schoology, on ClassLink. It's Savas EasyBridge. You're going to click on that, and it's going to take you to your weekly assignment. When you're done with your weekly assignment, you're going to do task 4, which is the weekly assessment, and that is graded. That is your test. Please make sure you're doing your best on that. All right, so just to review, we're going to be working on place value and rounding. So to do that, we need to know what each period is called. So this is my ones. And remember, within my ones, I have ones, tens, hundreds. In my thousands, I have ones, tens, hundreds. So that means I have 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. Then within my millions, I have ones, tens, hundreds. Notice my pattern here. So I have 1 millions, tens millions, and hundreds millions. And then in my billions, which we're not really going to be working on right now, but it also has ones, tens, and hundreds. All right, so let's review rounding numbers. We learned about this last year, so this is not something new. So last year, we learned to round numbers to the nearest 100, and we rounded from the tens and the hundreds. So let's review that before we move on to what we're working on this week. So when we round to the nearest 100, last year we drew our rounding roller coaster. So we remember, if we rounded to the nearest 100, we would circle the 100, and we would know, okay, I'm trying to figure out, is this number closer to 600 or closer to 700? So on my rounding roller coaster, I would put 600 on one side, 700 on the other, and then remember, we would make the midpoint would always be 50. So it would be 650. So then I look at my rounding roller coaster and I look, okay, I'm looking for 625. So obviously I can count by tens across my rounding roller coaster. So 610, 620, 630, and so on. So I'm going to, my pen. Hold on. Okay, so I have 600, 610, 620, and then 620, let's see, 620, 630, so 625 would be somewhere in here. So I know that 625 is closer to 600. So if I'm rounding to the nearest 100, my answer would be 600. Okay, so we also learned this last year. So our rounding rhymes. So 4 or less, I let it rest. 5 or more, I let it soar. So this is just like a little visual for you to remember. Remember, I'm looking at my neighbor, the number to the right. That's what I'm looking at when I say if it's 4 or less. I'm not asking if the number that's circled is 4 or less or 5 or more. I'm looking at the neighbor next to it. Okay, so we're going to round this number to the nearest 100. So I know I've got ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, but I'm looking at the nearest 100. So I'm going to circle ones, tens, hundreds. I'm going to circle my 100. And then I look next door. So I'm only looking next door to see if it's 4 or less. I'm going to let it rest, which means the number that's circled is going to stay the same. Or if it was 5 or more, I'm going to let it soar. That means the number that's circled is going to go up 1 more. But I look next door to my number here, and it's a 2. So I know that that's 4 or less. So the number that's circled, I'm going to let it rest. So that means when I write my answer, I'm going to keep my 6. That's in the thousands. The 3 is going to stay the same because I'm going to let it rest. And then everything after the circled number is all going to become zeros. So I have 1 0 and 2 zeros. So if I'm rounding this to the nearest 100, I know the answer would be 6,300. So I could draw my rounding roller coaster. If I did that, then I would look between 6,300 and 6,400. It does get a little bit more complicated. The bigger the numbers get, it gets a little bit more challenging to do that rounding roller coaster. So I think it's a little easier to just use this little trick and look at the neighbor next door. Okay, so this shows that I'm looking at the number that's circled and I'm looking next door to see if it's 4 or less. So I just talked all the way through this, so let me go ahead and move on. Okay, the next number, round number to the nearest tens. So I'm going to circle the number in the tens place. So I have ones, tens is right here. So I'm going to circle my tens. And then I'm going to look next door. So the number next door is 7. So let me remember, if it's 4 or less, I let it rest. If it's 5 or more, I let it soar 1 more. So the number that's circled, the number we're pointing at is 5 or more. So that means the number that's circled is going to go up 1 more. So it would be 6,000. The 3 is going to stay the same because I'm rounding to the nearest tens. And then I said this is going to go up 1 more. So it would be a 3. And then everything after the circle number becomes zeros. So my answer would be 6,330 if I'm rounding to the nearest tens. Okay, this is just showing you the same thing. Okay, the next number, round number to the nearest 1,000. So I'm going to start over here, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. So I'm going to circle my 1,000. I'm going to look next door. Okay, if it's the number next door is 4 or less, I'm going to let my circled number rest. So that means my 6, since this is a 4, my 6 is going to stay the same. So when I rewrite this, the 5 is going to stay the same because I'm not rounding to the nearest 10,000. My thousands is going to stay the same. And then everything after the circled number becomes zeros. So I've got 3 zeros. So my answer is 56,000. Okay, I think this is our last practice problem. So we're going to round this number to the nearest 10,000. So let's start over here. We got ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. So I'm going to circle my 10,000s. And then I'm going to look next door. If the number next door is 4 or less, I'm going to let the circled number rest. If it's 5 or more, I'm going to let the circled number soar 1 more. So I look next door and it's 5 or more. So that means the 8 is going to change to a 9. And then everything after it's going to become zeros. So my answer would be 90,000 if I'm rounding to the nearest 10,000. Okay, let's do some more practice. So this is our daily question for today. So let me move the camera up a little bit. Okay, so which number rounded to 6,200 when rounded to the nearest 100? So let's look at my answers here. So I'm going to round to the nearest 100. That means I'm looking at these numbers on this column. So that means if I look next door, if it's 4 or less, I let it rest. So that means if I rounded this, this would round to 6,100. It's really hard to write with this and write small. So I know that's not the answer. Okay, if I look next door, if it's 5 or more, I let it soar. So this would be 6,200. So this would be one answer. Okay, look next door. If it's 5 or more, I let it soar. So this would round to 6,200. So this would be an answer. Notice how I'm checking each one. That should be a check. Hold on. There we go. Okay, 6,203. This is already a 2, but when I look next door, it's 0. So that means the 2 is going to stay the same. So this would be 6,200. So this is going to be one of my answers. And then the last one, when I look next door, it's 4 or less. So this would say 6,100. So this would not be one of my answers. Okay, so if the problem like this was on the test, you need to make sure, notice how I looked at every single number. I looked at the hundreds and then I look next door. Hold on. I would suggest if you're doing this to actually like circle the hundreds so that like of each number, it's just hard for me to do that on the screen, but I would actually circle each one so your attention is focused on the hundreds. All right, place an X in the box that matches the name of each number with its standard form. So we have 790,640. So 790,000. This one has 795. This one has 709. 790,640. So this would be one of my answers. Let's look at the next one. 795,000. So I know this one's 795,064. So that would be this one. 460. So let's see if this one matches. 709,460. So that would be this one. 79,604. So that means it would be this one. So what I would do, I don't really have a lot of space, but as I was reading these, I could write them out as I'm reading them. So 795, I'm just writing here because this is the space I've got. I'm sorry, 790,000, I read that wrong. 640. 640. Kind of break it apart like that. So I know my answer would go over here. I just was writing it next to it. That's the only space I've got. So as I was solving each one, I would be writing it down as I read it. If you get the questions read, I would listen to me reading it and write it down as you are listening to it. Which statements correctly compare two numbers? So it says statements, so I think there might be more than one. So let's look. 2,590 is greater than 2,950. So if I'm comparing these numbers, I'm going to start in the thousands, I'm going to go over. So I know the 2 is the same, but this number is a 5, and this, hold on. This number is a 5, and this one's a 9. So I know that 5 is less than 9, so I know that's not an answer. 2,950 is less than 2,590. Again, I'm going to look at this number. The 2's are the same, so I'm going to look at the hundreds place. I know 9 is larger than 5, so that can't be an answer. Okay, the 2's are the same. I'm going to look at the hundreds. This is a 5, this is a 9. So 2,590 is less than 2,950. So I know that is one of the answers because I know 5 is less than 9. 2,950 is greater than 2,590. So when I look in the hundreds place, I know 9 is greater than 5. So what I'm really saying is 900 is greater than 500. So I know that's an answer. Oh, I don't know why I put an X there. Let's put a check. There we go. And then 2,590 is equal to 2,950. So when I look next door, or I'm sorry, when I look at the hundreds place, I see that they're different. That can't, and the tens place is different. So they cannot be equal. So that is not an answer. Which is 3,072 written in expanded form. So let's work this problem out together. So I'm going to start at the left of this number. So I have 3,000. So I'm going to write 3,000. I hope you guys are able to see what I'm writing. It's the first time I've used this pen, so I'm not sure. Plus, then I'm going to look here. There's nothing here. I could put a placeholder. I don't have to though, so I'm going to just keep going. So then the next number is my 7 in my tens place. So I know there's only one number after this, so it would be 70. I'm going to write 70, which is 70. And then my last number is just 2. So let's see if I have any that match this. A has 300, so I know that's not the answer because the 3 is in the thousands place. B looks like mine, so I think B is going to be my answer. Let's keep going. C is not my answer because this says 700 and I only have 70, so I know that's not the answer. And then D, my thousands are right. This says 700. I don't have 700, and it says 20. I don't have 20. I only have 2. So I know that's not the answer. They're trying to trick me. So the answer is B. Next question. What digit could be put on the blank to make the statement true? So notice like all of these aren't about rounding, but they are all working on place value. So that's why I kind of put these all together because we're kind of reviewing all of these concepts all together. Write a digit in the blank. So on the test, you won't have to type in the number, but you will have to identify what symbol goes in the place to make the statement true. So let's see. I have 807,439 and 807,000 blank 39. So I know that this is greater than, so I'm going to put a G to remind me that this is greater than. So 807,439 is greater than this number. That means this number has to be smaller. So I need something smaller than a 4. I could put a 3, I could put a 2, I could put a 1, I could put a 0, and they would all be correct. So I'm just going to put a 3. I feel like putting a 3. And then I'm going to read it again to check to make sure that it makes sense. 807,439 is greater than 807,339. That is correct. Good job. Okay, so this is kind of like what we talked about earlier with rounding. So rounding is a way to find which multiple of 10, 100, or 1,000, and so on, a number is closest to. So this is kind of like the rounding roller coaster. Instead of it coming up like a roller coaster, we just kind of flattened it. So it's, instead of it having the little hump that goes like this, same concept. We still got the 3,000, we have the 4,000, and in the middle is 3,500. So I'm looking to round 3,567 to the nearest 1,000. And if I'm looking at this, I can see, okay, this number is closer to 4,000 than it is 3,000. Another way I could do that is I could circle my thousands place, look next door. If it's 5 or more, I let the circled number soar one more. So that means my 3 is going to become 4, and I would be rounding it to 4,000. So rounded to the nearest 1,000, 3,567 is rounded to 4,000. That's supposed to be a 0. Okay, let's practice. So if we wanted to use the rounding roller coaster, I really don't suggest that. I really just suggest using my trick, but if you really want to do it this way, if this is what works for you, that's totally fine. So we're going to round 392,153 to the nearest 10. So I'm going to have my nearest 10. This is in my tens place. So I know, is there a way I can type? That'd be easier than writing these numbers. No. I'm going to round this to 392,150. And then I'm looking for tens, so 50 and 60. So I'm going to put 392,000, it's supposed to be a 2, 160, and then think. So I'm looking, what's halfway between 50 and 60? It would be 155. So I'm going to have 392,150 155. And then the number I'm looking for is 153. So I know 153 would be 50, 51, 52, 53 would be about here. So I know that that number is closer to the 150, 392,150. So my answer would be 392. Okay, my number is getting worse. I think my hand's getting tired. 150. Or I could circle the 5. I could look next door. If it's 4 or less, I let the circled number rest. So that means it would still be 150. Okay, round 29,485 to the nearest 1,000. So I'm looking in the thousands place. So I know I'm going to put 29,000. And then what would one more 1,000 be? This is kind of like what got tricky for us in class last week. So if I'm looking at 29, one more would be 30. So I would have 30,000. And then, oops, hold on. And then halfway between those two would be 29,500. Okay, so then I have to plot this on my number line here. So 29,485. So I have, if I'm looking at the, if I'm looking at the hundreds, it would be 29, 29,100, 29,200, 29,300, 29,400, 29, oops, that should be over here. That should be over there, sorry. But my number would be somewhere about here. So it's on the left side, so that means it's closer to 29,000. Again, I could just circle it, look next door. If it's 4 or less, I let the circled number rest, so it would be 29,000. Okay, if you want to do that last one by yourself, you can. So we're finished with our instructional video. What's next? You're going to do the weekly assignment on Savas. Guys, it's very, very, very important that you're doing that. That's an extra video to help you. It's extra practice and an extra quick check. I am grading this, so it's very important that you do it. And then you also have the weekly assessment. That test this week is very important. That's the last grade you're going to have before progress reports. So if you have any questions about any of your assignments or you need help with anything, please let me know. Oh, this is what your task looks like on Savas. So this is, you're going to go on Savas, click Savas Realize on the right side, and then you're going to do 1.4, Visual Learning, Practice Buddy, and Quick Check. Here's what your test looks like. You're going to go to Schoology, week 4, and then you're going to click Task 4, Weekly Assessment, Oral Presentation if you get the questions read. All right, if you have any questions, let me know. See you soon.